Good evening. Welcome to Borough Fan TV and the Monday Night Show with me, James Hutchinson. Storm our winners past, and on the football field, we've had a week that perfectly encapsulates Borough's season so far. A mind-numbing defeat at home to Preston North End was followed by a heartening display and a big 3 points at Huddersfield on Saturday. How confident Borough fans are you that Chris Wilder and the current squad can address the inconsistencies that we've suffered so far this season? Joining me to discuss this, the two games that have taken place in the past week, and look ahead to the weekend's game at home to Swansea City, David Campbell and Jacob Waters. Welcome to the show, lads.
Thanks for having me.
Great to see you again. And Borough fans, get in touch as always. We love to hear your thoughts and opinions. Thanks for watching, Luke and Gareth. Hope you're well, boys. So we'll get straight onto the show, lads, and the Preston game. David, I'll come to you first, mate. Last Tuesday, it didn't bring the result that we wanted as Borough fans. It was a bit of a slow start. I know we were talking before we come on air tonight about the first 15, 20 minutes. But after that, the boys in red really got into the stride and produced a positive opening 45 minutes, as they have on a number of occasions this season. What for you caught your eye on the evening in terms of positives from a Borough point of view, David?
I think it was the intensity that we maintained up until obviously they equalised. I thought we were in control, created chances. It was just our Achilles heel again, which was our poor finishing, which didn't take us out of sight. But yeah, the first 20 minutes, I thought we started slow and pressed. We couldn't get the ball off Preston. And then once we asserted ourselves on the game, our midfield took control of the game, and I thought we were playing very good football. It was one pass. It was one touch, one pass, and pass and movement. I thought there was a lot of bright players, on the performance against Preston. But again, if you're not finishing your chances, and 1-0 is always risky in the Championship. And once they equalised, it seemed like we'd gone to pot, which was just a bit of a shame.
Yeah. And Jacob, great to see you back on the show again, pal. We've spoken in recent shows about physical conditioning, and that maybe being one of the reasons for Borough's poor second half displays. Now, obviously, we'll get onto the Huddersfield game further in the programme tonight, but how much do you think a lack of ability in terms of handling setbacks is a problem? Because that happened against Preston. It's happened on a number of occasions this season where we've conceded a goal, and in a short space of time after that, we've conceded another one. Is that something that's a problem in the mindset, do you think, possibly, Jacob?
Yeah, probably. I think coming off the back of like a few tumultuous period, a goal goes against you, the heads go down. You need a Sol Bamba to go, come on, and then Sol Bamba's the one who knocks the mistake in. So yeah, I think so. But I think that's grown in the squad as well. And I think with Wilder at the wheel, that will change because he'll change the mentality. So yeah, I think that is a problem. But hopefully going forward, it won't be, because there'll be a change in mentality about how to adapt when it goes against you, because there are going to be times this season, because of the expansive play that Wilder does, where we're going to concede, because we're not going to be conceding a few goals. There's probably going to be a few more goals conceded just because of the way that we play. But I'm up for outscoring the opposition because it's fun to watch. But we're going to have to overcome a bit of adversity if, a header goes in here and there. So,
yeah.
And David, as much of the season has progressed so far, we've been talking about the performances of individual players. Probably the one that's been most talked about is Marcus Tavernier. Provoked so much debate. Now, last week against Preston, I thought he did a lot of good work off the ball in terms of defensively. I thought he did a really sound job against Preston. But is it now a case of doesn't matter what he does, good, bad, indifferent, he's the number one Boo Boys target now?
Unfortunately so, which is uncalled for in my opinion, because what he does offer us in terms of work rate and, intensity, I think he offers a lot. If he could just get up on that end product, I think we'd have one hell of a player. But we've been talking about his end product for 4 seasons now, and it hasn't improved. So, that tells us a lot. But we'd be a lot worse without Tavernier in the team. And yeah, you hit the nail on the head defensively. I thought he was excellent against Preston. He did a block in the second half, didn't he, where they were coming in, and he just managed to get a toe on it. And I think he's suited to that box to box in a 3. In a 2, I think he's not disciplined enough. You could say the same as Piero as well. But in a 3, I like Piero, Crooks and Tavernier as the floaters going around, because they've got that energy. And I think you've seen the best of Johnny Howson because of the likes of those 3 as well.
Okay. And Jacob, we've got Chris Wilder here now at the Borough, maybe earlier than what some people possibly expected. Is it a bonus that he can see our shortcomings, our strengths now, as opposed to, say, if he'd come in the summer or at the end of the season? He's now got this time now to pick our faults or work on our strengths and put everything together. If it comes great this season, if it comes well this season, that's great. But next season, is that in your thoughts that you think it's a good thing that he's here now rather than if he'd have come later in the season or possibly next summer?
I still want to talk about Tav. I wasn't asked about him. It was just Dave.
I know what you're going to say about Tav, but go on.
We haven't done all night, that's why, Jacob.
Well, you know what? Actually, I think with Piero fit, he's going to have to start to knock it up a bit because I'm probably the Tav train. I'm not even on the train. I'm probably the train itself. But
the driver.
I'm the driver. But really, looking at his end product, the last game at Huddersfield is stray passing. That 100% needs to improve. But because he's being allocated the centre midfield spot, and because Piero's about to be fit, he has to improve. Because clearly that's where he sees him as a centre mid. So he's going to have to improve, otherwise he's going to get chopped and changed. So I've still got a lot of hope for him, but I've noticed that there is that recurring issue, because he's doing all the other things right. He's getting in the positions, he's being busy, he's being defensively minded, etc. But that does need to improve. And what was the other question again?
Just about Wilder being here now rather than coming, say, if he did in the summer. I know it's a hypothetical question, but say if he'd have come here in the summer, he wouldn't have had the time that he's got now to look at our strengths, weaknesses and stuff like that. He's here now, so it's a good thing whether we go up this year or get in the playoffs this year, but he's got time to assess things now, hasn't he?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of when the appointment was made. I know Neil didn't get treated brilliantly, but I'm a fan of having him in at this particular time. That 2-week break that he came in, giving him the January transfer window, implementing a new strategy and a new project. I'm all for that. If we don't get the playoffs this season, whatever, for me, that's not the point now. The point is to see a new design, a strategy that's implemented and we're watching it work. And I think in a short space of time, we've watched it evolve from the first game, they were all over a bit, and then they played a little bit better, and then we've just got that win. And I think we'd all agree the first half, that performance was brilliant. And we could see it starting to click against Preston, especially the midfield three. We're tearing it up. So, yeah, so I'm a fan that he came in when he did, and I think it was quite an astute appointment when it was. So, yeah.
It gives him a free hit till January, doesn't it, to assess the players, and then whoever's not good enough gets him enough time to get them out.
Yeah.
The only downfall is like the loan players for me out. You know, he's not going to be able to assess them until January and make a decision on them. I've seen obviously, I think Wood was recalled, but seeing like Suspense and Coulson, they're going to come back and he'll be wanting to assess them as well.
Yeah.
Is Coulson getting his game? He's
not.
Yeah,
and Wings on the bench as well at Sheffield Wednesday, so they're both struggling out on loan. Paul Nicholas got in touch. Don't get why Tav gets the amount of abuse he gets. Fairness not been fantastic. Just needs to gain his confidence. There's definitely a player in there. No matter how he plays, some man's slain for the sake of it.
The problem with that, though, James, is he was playing out of position this season, but he wasn't last season. He wasn't the previous 2 seasons.
Yeah, and those sentiments are echoed by Lee Fisher. Hope you're well, Lee. He's saying, how many times do certain fans target our players who then move on to do better for other clubs? These fans seem to like making them lose confidence instead of giving them confidence. So, yeah there's people there, and Luke Boy's there certainly echoing what you think there. Jacob, he's happy with your assessment of things, all things Tav. Anyway, going back to Preston, a couple more questions before we move on to the Huddersfield game of the weekend. And David, I mean, after the game, Chris Wilder was quite frank and open and honest in his assessment after the match last week. What did you find most telling in his comments after the game last Tuesday night?
I think it's what Jacob hit up earlier, James, about the mentality, when he was talking about the mentality of not seeing games out in individual players. I have seen that on occasions this season and last season where a certain few players try a little bit too much, and rather than be professional and see the game out, they're wanting to do the flash stuff, and ultimately losing possession in the championship creates chances for the other team. And I don't like to single players out myself because there's a lot of inconsistencies within championships rather than pick up on one player. But look, I think he knows the players who are going to be beyond January, and I think that was a sign of intent, that statement coming out and saying that who, if they don't get on board with him, these types of players who are trying to play for themselves, that they won't be here.
Yeah. Jacob, do you think in a way, were you surprised at Chris Wilder's comments at the timing of him, bearing in mind it was only his second game in charge, or do you think he just felt it had to be said, so he's gone ahead and done it?
Well, I've been used to Neil Warnock for this long, so I'm not surprised much anymore. I like it. I like that attitude. I like that cutthroat kind of, let me get hold of it. And the thing is, he's been there, he's done it, and he's bought the T-shirt, so he can say it. He can come with an air of arrogance, really, because look what he did at Sheffield United. And to be honest, I think he's right in saying it. He has got away. He's been employed to strategize. He's doing it, and he's saying, get on board with me. And funnily enough, after the game, I was like, what a brilliant comment, because that's what I was thinking at some points. I was like, Spora's carrying the ball way too much and not letting go of it. Tav was getting a bit silly with it. Hernandez didn't pick his head up. So I personally agreed that if they'd have started playing between each other a little bit more, maybe he would have got something more out of the game, even though it was a freak result anyway. So I like that kind of attitude, and I think if he's going to back up results, I like it even more. Yeah. I won't like it if you start losing. Like, I'll be like, that cheeky fella, what's he on about?
He can get away with it at the moment, Jacob, can't he? Because it's not his team. If it was Warner coming out with comments like that, and if he's built that team, it's a different mentality, and the fans won't take it on board. But he's got a free hit. He can really say what he wants. He can slate the previous regime as much as he wants, because ultimately that's why he's been put in the position where he's in.
Yeah. Well, I look at the squad now. I look at that first 11 with Warnock in charge as well. That is the best I've seen us play in that first half for a long time. 100% this season and last. It was brilliant. So, and he did that with that same squad that Warnock left him with, which gives me great hope for thinking if he can actually get a few of his like-minded players in, and he said he's already got targets that he's down the line with, that bodes very well for us.
That's common though, isn't it, Jacob? When Mourinho got sacked at Man United, you could have took charge and you'd have seen a bounce back, because everybody wanted Mourinho gone. And I think because everybody was wanting Warnock gone, there was always going to be a bounce back in terms of performances, because it couldn't really have got any lower.
Yeah, we weren't doing great. Like, I think the thing is, though, with Warnock, I think we should give him credit for leaving the dressing room the way he's left it, because there was no division. And Wilder said as he went in, he said, this dressing room's on board. They're all together. They're all mates. It's a good place to go into. It's not like I'm trying to mend things so much. I'm just trying to build things a bit differently. So credit to Neil there for not, not making the place a mare before he left,
Yeah. And I think that's some of the Warnock always commented on the dressing room, didn't he? I think once certain players were moved on at the back end of last season, he always commented about how together, and it was a really good changing room that he had. And mentioning there about his starting 11s that Chris Wilder's picked so far. Dan Shaw, thanks for watching, Dan. He said there, I like the way Wilder has a first 11 already and he's sticking to it. We'll talk about that later on in the show, because that might come under question this weekend, because there's a few players that are working their way back from injury and back to full fitness. But on to Huddersfield, Dave, and it was with some trepidation, and not just because of the conditions, at a Borough side who had gone 5 games without a win, travel to take on a Huddersfield team who had been 5 games unbeaten in West Yorkshire on Saturday. But there you go, that word consistency. Yet again, the Borough arguably putting their best display of the season. Where do you think the foundations for that victory came from on Saturday?
I don't know, because I think all the 2 performances prior have had good points, good performances. So I wouldn't say I was confident going in Huddersfield, but we've been playing well the last 2 games. But I think the game was won in the battle of midfield. House and Crooks and Tavernier just bossed it for me. And we were getting that final, the transition period between midfield and attack, was the balance was right. And I think we've been struggling to join Spur and Watmore in attack, and Crooks and Tab were joining and linking up really well, and our wing backs were pushing on. So I thought, the balance was right on Saturday. Yeah. Like I said last week, I've got a friend who's a Huddersfield fan, and he said, look, he doesn't believe the performances warranted the 5 home wins that they've had at home. He said they're being a poor team, but I thought we played extremely well.
Yeah. And going back a little bit to the Preston comments after the game by Chris Wilder, Jacob, but it says a lot for those players that haven't been called out and maybe questioned a little bit about the display against Preston. Largely the same side. There was only one change to the starting lineup. They could produce a performance and get a victory like that. It says a lot about them, doesn't it, Jacob?
Yeah, but if I was one of them, I'd want to do the same thing. It's quite an exciting project going forward, so I can imagine as a player it would be quite attractive to get on board with that. So yeah, and I echo what Dave said. I thought they were brilliant, and I thought it was one in midfield. And as I said, as an aspiring midfielder, watching Johnny Howson glide through that match like he was on ice skates was something else for me. I know people, say his legs are gone and whatever, and maybe they have a bit, but he was absolutely phenomenal in there. Just completely dictating all the play. And because of how he was dictating the play, he was allowing Crooks to get on the ball and really fancy positions as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and again, Crooks, he was unbelievable. Those two, for me, were outstanding against Huddersfield. Yeah. And if they can keep linking up like that, Tav, for me, I am the Tav train, but he wasn't great. I didn't think he was overly great. I think he did okay. But I think the stars really were Howson and his movement within the three, to be fair to him. But he wasn't as outstanding as the other two. But I think as that midfield three, namely Howson and Crooks, they won that game for us. Well, you can't take anything away from Watmore as well. But I think it was one in the midfield, and their ability to retain possession, keep possession, and cycle possession.
Let's not beat around the bush though. Like under Warnock, how many times did we all say, look, we're bypassing our midfield. The ball's just going over the top, and there's no support from the midfield, and there's no protection. Under Wilder, in all three games, we've had complete control of the midfield, and I think our performances have been immense because of that.
Yeah,
because we're in control of it. I don't know if that's because we've gone from a 2 to a 3, but we just seem to be using the midfield a lot more. The defence are using them. They're more solid, but they're also joining the attacks more. And I think if you've got a foundation of a solid midfield like that, it builds around the rest of the squad. So, long may it continue for me.
I mean, we've talked about the midfield. We'll talk about Watmore further on in the show. But, Jacob, I mean, you've mentioned Crooks, House and Tavernier there. And no doubt the three of them did work very well on Saturday. Chris Wilder's going to have a bit of a dilemma this weekend because it appears that Martin Payero's back in training, probably going to be fit for the weekend. Do you stick with the trio that got you that win at Huddersfield at the weekend, or do you see some alterations being made in that part of the team?
Martin who?
Really?
He can't walk back in the team after that. Like, he can't. I'd be very gutted. The worst of the three is probably Tav, but I'd be fuming if I was dropped after the result the way it was and how they controlled things. Yeah. But as I was saying before, it really does push Tav now to turning it on. Well, it pushes them all, really, but probably Tav out the lot of them because that's probably the place he'd take. Crooks isn't getting moved out anytime soon, and I can't see anyone else doing what Howson's currently doing in the team unless Crooks went deeper, but he's way more effective further up the pitch. So you can't chuck him in straight from the off, I don't think, but I'm not wild, I'm not paid. But that does bring a very good dilemma and dynamic. So there's going to have to be a game upped by Tav, and probably Crooks is going to feel it a little bit as well. It was funny because Crooks was actually saying how talented he is. I was listening to an interview or a read up, and he was saying that in training he's technically brilliant, so he can notice as well. And I'd say Crooks is technically quite brilliant as well. So interesting times in the central positions for Middlesbrough.
Yeah. And we've mentioned that man's name, David Duncan Watmore. What can you say, not only about the goals, but his performances in general in recent weeks, but those two goals, especially on Saturday?
Yeah, and I think his link-up play, I mean, the goals, both were excellent finishes, but take away from the finishes, because I know the finishes are what count. The build-up play for the goals, the ball by Crooks, but even the ball by Howson that set Osborne on his way on the right-hand side.
Yeah. He had a good game, Ozzy, didn't he?
Yeah, Osborne, brilliant player. But yeah, Watmore finished them, but the work up to that was fantastic. But what you're getting with Watmore's work rate, I think him and Sparora now are building a partnership where they're struggling defenders. They're putting that much pressure on their back line, they're tiring them out and they're making them think. And if there's switch off, we know we've got the pace in behind to get there. And, you know, the Ginger Ninja strikes again. He had a few weeks towards the back end of the last season, but this last couple of games under Wilder, he's been a revelation.
Yeah. Colin Frye's got in touch with us, lads, and Jacob, he's saying Wilder is playing the players in their preferred roles, so we have the right balance in the team. Do you go along with that, Jacob?
I think namely we're probably speaking about Tav there, aren't we? He's putting back centrally. He's playing he's playing Jones as a right wing back though, and we've seen him there once this season. I think once as a right wing back. He's played left wing back a bit, hasn't he?
Yeah, I've never seen him under right wing back, but I might be wrong.
Maybe I got that wrong then, but
I might be wrong.
But he has an half come into his own there.
Yeah,
and we might be doing Forest a favour actually, because Jed Spence might end up staying there because of the emergence. I mean, I'd love Jed Spence to come back and be competition, but I can't imagine he'll be too happy about it, considering his form in Forest. And they're gaining some points now. I can't imagine him wanting to come and have to struggle for his place back. But
yeah, that's it, isn't it?
But I'd agree. I'd definitely agree with Tav's being moved centrally, which changes him as a player. It looks like Watmore's now going to be. He is a striker finally. Like that's what someone seems to be, definitely is a striker. And I'm loving the link-up play between the two, because you notice Sporer acts as like a Bobby Firmino type player, comes as like that false nine, and then he'll pick the ball up. And obviously that's why Watmore's the legs. Watmore's sprinting about. No wonder he gets dragged off after 70 minutes or whatever, because he needs someone else that like Hernandez to come and sprint about for him. But although he's not finishing as much, Sporer, look, if you watch his guile and his movement and how he moves and takes players out the game, he's brilliant at it. Just little small moves across a defender that pulls him out, that creates space. He's doing it all the time, and that's probably why he's like an international level striker. He does, in my opinion, need to pick up his finishing now, though, because he has had a good few chances. But as Dave said, if he pinged them in, he'd probably be a Premiership striker. Mm-hmm. So it's, but he's doing an unsung hero's job. And if you just watch him, he's fantastic.
Yeah. I think Crooks' through balls are ideal for Watmore and Sporer, aren't they? How many times have we seen the ball behind the back of their defence? Mm-hmm. And when you've got pacey strikers, that's where your opportunity comes. How many times have we seen the ball going to the chest of Assemblonga and Fletcher, and it's coming back? Under Wilder, it seems to be going in behind, which is a different dynamic and to play with. And as fans and as strikers, I mean, I've never played a striker, but that's what you want to run onto. And it's the first time we've seen that in a long time. Yeah. What I can think of.
Yep, Steve Gorby's got in touch. Thanks for watching again, Steve. He said, Watmore can be that striker that Wilder never had at Sheffield United that gets the goals. As pleasing as the goals were, David, I think the second 45 minutes, in a way, a bigger barrier was passed in terms of that we've had a lead, we've held on to it, we've got through the second half. That's a big barrier crossed, hopefully, that on Saturday, isn't it?
Yeah, Jacob touched on earlier, and it's the mentality of the players. And when you start going through the process and believing it, that'll come with confidence, and that'll happen more. But, he's building blocks here. First, it was getting people in right positions. Now he's looking at getting a full 90 minutes performance out. The only negative, which I hate going to negative, is the last, a sloppy goal to concede right at the very end. Something like that needs addressing, because how many times is that happening? You're talking, it happened against Millwall, it's now happened at Preston, and now it's happened at Huddersfield. So even though there's a lot of positives in 3 performances prior, we've left a soppy goal in, which worries me a little bit. And I think one of the first things we'll be looking at in January is the new goalkeeper position.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a fair point, mate. And Jacob, I mean, looking at the defence, on Saturday, that one change was Lee Peltier, who was out for a month. I mean, before we talk about Lee Peltier going out, I mean, his performances in recent weeks, I actually thought he was our best player against Preston.
Overlapping centre half.
Yeah, do you know, I mean, he's made a lot of critics eat their words, I think, from when he was at the start of the season. But obviously, Peltier was replaced by Anthony Dijksteel on Saturday. He took his place alongside Bamber and McNair. You've got Dale Fry back in training as well now and maybe fit for Saturday. Nathan Woods returned from a loan spell at Hibs. Do you think it's a case of, again, as with the midfield three, you don't change them after a victory, or do you think there might be a change there on Saturday against Swansea at the back?
Depends how fit Fry is, I guess. But just to touch on what you said, I think Peltier has been the most consistent out the three of them.
Yeah.
He was brilliant against Preston, and he was playing as a centre forward at one point, wasn't he, when he hit the bar?
Yeah. Overlapping centre half, yeah.
I was gutted to see him out, but that being said, I was very, very impressed with Jick's performance, considering the time he's been out, and he's had, did he say 2 training sessions in him?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got an engine on him, that lad, hasn't he? So I do want to. I'd love to see him start turning it up again, because when he did play in a 3 for us, he was very, very good. He was one of the best actually under Warnock in that position. I do think that a fit Fry and a firing Fry, I'd rather have in than Sol Bamba. I have liked Sol Bamba, but he has got a few nightmares in him, and he's passing back to the keeper every time he does it. I start shaking, because he's done it a few times and got us in a bit of trouble. And I'm not criticising him too much, because he's done a lot of good things. But for me, a fit Fry on form would take his position instead of Sol Bamba. I'd have Lee Peltier the other side of him, and then I'd have McNair. That they would be my 3, based on the performances and based on attributes and how I know Fry can play. And Jix would have to probably take the bench, because I think McNair just offers a different level, and he can still score goals from centre back. He can take free kicks. He can take set pieces. He can head. Like he can do a little bit more than Jix Steele, in my opinion. But those would probably be my 3 if they're all firing.
Jake, a question for you. Did it surprise you that Dijksteel never came in at right wing back? Because when Wilder came, I thought that'd be his ideal position. I didn't see him playing as a centre back under Wilder. And when you put Jones there, I was a little bit. I thought he might have gone Dijksteel there.
Well, because I put my team in before it happened, the first Wilder team, and I put Jonesy in it, didn't I? Right wing back.
Yeah.
I think because of the emergence of Jones, I would have been surprised if I'd have saw Jicksteel in there instead of him. And I think that because of the attacking style, he prefers a wing back who's going to drive and take on, and he's got that little bit of spark at the third. And I'm saying that Jicksteel actually has got it when he gets on his bike, but he's not a Jones. Yeah, he's not a Jones though, and he's not like Bowler. Bowler will also do that. He's got a few nutmegs in him. He's got some decent skill, and he'll have a little drive at them as well. So yeah, I wasn't too surprised to see he hadn't been put in there instead of Jones.
I think what I would say as well about that, though, and in terms of also Jones and the Spence argument, is that I've been pleasantly surprised by watching Jones play. That, bearing in mind, it's like his first full season as a pro at this level, at Championship level, but he already seems more clued up than Jed Spence in terms of defensively, sniffing out danger, being in the right position.
Yeah.
That worries me if Jed Spence was to come back here, because there's so many times in games you see Jed Spence go to sleep and just switch off completely. Jones already seems to get that, and he's already tucking in when there's players in dangerous positions in our penalty area. And I think I had worries about him playing as a wing back, but I actually think he can take this role on.
Yeah, and James, I think going on that goes back to Wilder's comments about egos and personalities. From what I've heard, Jed Spence hasn't got the personality that likes to be told what to do. You know, he's a bit of a free spirit, doesn't listen to what he should be told, where Jones wants to learn, he wants to make a career in the game and push on. So I think, once you've got players like that in your team wanting to give it all, it's miles better. I agree. I think we shouldn't be bringing Spence back. I know he's having a good spell at not Forest, but you just don't want to upset the dynamic of the squad as well.
Okay. And David, I mean, 3 games into the Chris Wilder, it's only 3 games, but there's so many reasons, I think, to be optimistic, isn't there?
Yeah, extremely. The open, honest assessment, I think a lot of the fans are getting on board with what he's saying. Jacob touched on earlier, and what he's putting out in the press is what we've all, as fans, been thinking and not getting the answers for ourselves. And I think January is going to be a very interesting period, but the performances have improved, and now we just need to get a few results up until January and then see where we go from there. But it's a very exciting time.
Yeah, and Jacob,
even after the Preston match, I walked out and I was talking to my son Harry, Hi, Harry, if you're watching, by the way. And I said, you know what, son, no matter what happens, how long it takes us to get a win, you can see we've changed a style and it will eventually work.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it is a matter of time before it clicks into place and more wins come on the board. Even if, and mark my words, we lose the next 2, I won't come in here moaning. I really believe in this strategy. And I think that we can already see the signs that it's going to work. If he doesn't have the personnel for it to work right now, it won't work right now. If it was just a lucky first half, it might have been a lucky first half. But what we can see is a strategy that's taking place. And that, for me, is the most important part, because you need that in place. Then you get the players on board, and then the wins start coming once it all clicks. And if this season we're mid-table, which actually I don't think we will be, I think we'll probably maybe still 6 points out of the top 6 until January or somewhere like that. But I really believe when he brings his players in January, we'll go on a nice little run. It wouldn't be too surprising for me to think Middlesbrough would end up 6th around that kind of position. And that's not a prediction, but it wouldn't surprise me, considering you can see what he's trying to put into play. But if that didn't happen, then I think next season's the season where the emergence of the Chris Wilder's Middlesbrough is actually going to come to the table. Yeah. And it actually is a really exciting time to be a fan. No matter what happens with Borough Swansea, for example, it's a good time now.
Got to trust the process, haven't you?
Yeah. And David, throw this one over to you. Leighton McDougall's been in touch, and he said he's looking forward to seeing who Wilder brings in January in the transfer window. We've spoken before on the show, and I'll throw this one out to you as well, Jacob, after David's answered it. But what areas do you think Chris Wilder will be looking at strengthening in January?
Well, because he's playing the wing-back formation, obviously, I think he needs cover at both wing-back positions, because even though Jones is playing well, you know, it's not natural position. So I'll be looking to get someone who can do both positions, right back and left back. Centre half, obviously, if you're playing a 3, well, we haven't got 3 centre halves, so he's going to have to add another one in there, whether it's as cover. I think he'll go for the first team because, look, yes, Peltier's been good, Bamba's been good, but they're aging players and they're not going to be able to do it week in, week out. So definitely it'll be a centre half and a goalkeeper as well.
Yeah.
You know,
we need one of them.
It just doesn't still move confidence. You could get rid of all 3 for me.
Good, couldn't you? You get rid of all 3 and put me in.
Yeah. Put all 3 goalkeepers in and we still concede a daft goal. Do you know what I mean? I know he's claiming Lumley's got a knock or what have you. I'm not buying that. I think something's gone on there. Maybe.
Do you echo that, Jacob?
What if he's full of it and he's not actually injured?
No, just a goalkeeper number 1 priority, and what other areas?
I wouldn't say number 1, but it's definitely a priority. I can see some outgoings. I can see people are gonna go, you're joking, aren't you? But I can see Hernandez going for more game time, because he's not going to be deployed as a wing back. He's not a striker. Unless he comes off the bench and does something soon, I can see him going. I can see Ikpeazu going. Who else can I see getting shipped out?
Saliki will go, warning.
Saliki, I can see Saliki going back. But it depends. Hopefully he can do something in the next month. But yeah, I could see him going. And then I can see him bringing in that. Well, hopefully he said his number 1 target's that Balogun is his name, from Arsenal, that young kid.
Yeah.
So I think his target, he wants another striker. I can see us bringing in definitely another centre back, one of the 3. We need another keeper, but whether he sees it like that, I'm not sure. And probably if he brings Jed Spence back in, I'd have. Well, we've got that Neil Taylor, so if we sign him on like another 6 months, I think if we bring a centre back, a striker, a goalkeeper, and Spence back, I think that would look good. But I've got a feeling as well he'll probably bring another centre mid in. I've had that feeling, like, because he's got a very specific way of playing, hasn't he? And how he likes his centre mids to play. And I wonder if he's looking at it saying, you know what, if I send Saliki back, I can bring in X, Y, or Z to add a bit more flavour to that midfield.
When you keep talking about the future, that's when you've got to look at Bamba, Peltier, Saliki, and thinking, if they aren't going to stick around, what good are they doing for me at the moment?
Yeah. I mean, what did you make of that news that was doing the rounds today about Marcus Brown possibly going out on loan in January? Do you think that's a non-runner, or do you think you can see something in that, and you think that he may go out on loan to get some fitness or get some games under his belt? Do you think that's a possibility, Jacob?
100%, yeah. He doesn't fit the system, really, does he? Because,
100%.
I mean, he's not a number 10. He might have played it, but if you watch footy, you see a number 10. But he would play a wide man of a front three, or he could play as a winger. We don't play either of them, so he's victim of formation, and I don't think he's going to get many chances. I kind of see him like Hernandez won't get that many chances, so I can definitely see Brown going out unless some injuries happen and he comes in and the next couple of games and he comes on in 10 minutes and scores a goal as a centre forward and there's this upheaval, like something dramatic like that. Apart from that, I reckon he'll go out on loan, yeah. And good on him as well. He seems like a jovial character on Twitter and that. He seems like he's a right laugh, so I'd like to see him do well.
You touched something there, Jacob, which worries me with certain managers. The only worry for me is if we get loads of players that fits his formation as this 3-5-2, if you start getting beat games, where's your opportunity change? So if we're getting rid of the likes of Hernandez, we're getting rid of the likes of Brown, you're stuck to one formation, and if that ain't working, I think sometimes you need to mix it up, and we're not going to have that if we have no wingers. And how many times were we crying out before under Warner, before we got Balassi and Cabano, we said we've got no wingers. At the moment, we've got them. If we let them go, we're back to square one and we've got no second option, and that worries me. How many managers do you see? You've got to be a bit versatile in your tactics. To be a top manager, you've got to be able to do that.
And do you think that was the problem he had at Sheffield United in the Premier League, where the first season did very well, but then everybody else sort of got wise to the overlapping centre-backs and his system of play, knew what was coming and put their tactics in line to address that?
100%, James. And it happened with Kranker, and that's how Kranker got found out.
Yeah.
Thing is, how do you keep a hungry, good winger happy saying, listen, mate, 3-5-2, 75% of the time, on the odd occasion I'm going to switch it, then you'll get your chance. Like, if I'm a winger and I'm worth my salt, I won't be there. I'd rather go play for Millwall and get my game if they're playing wingers. So it's like, but you bang on. You're right though. You're right. So it's almost like what you do is you want players who can adapt, like a Jones. He can play as a winger or a wing back. So you can need players who can play in like a couple of positions to keep them happy, because you know. Ornel Hernandez is not going to want to stay at Middlesbrough being on the bench, is he? No. Considering the last time he was a Championship, he's banged 9 goals in, got promoted with Norwich, and he was trying to force his way into a Prem side. So you can't imagine him being sat on the bench going, I'm going to do this for the full season, when he's just fit after an injury. I can imagine him going, look, if you're not going to play me, I totally understand. I'll drift over to another club that play wingers.
That's where you need more versatile players. The likes of Tavernier, though, don't you? He can play centrally, but he can play as a winger. You know, I think that's when Crooks can play as a 10 as a striker and a number 8. I think you need to get a bit more versatility with our signings rather than just one position.
Yeah. I'm going to move off the Huddersfield game in a second, David. But before we do, I mean, we've said before that the club are very fortunate to have the support and the backing of the fans that they do, especially away from home on the road. And that was evident again on Saturday, wasn't it?
Yeah, away from home we're immense, and rather than just being one of those fans who think, you know, glass half full, we are away from home one of the better supports, you know, in the country. Never mind just the division. Every time, no matter where we play, even if it's on the south coast, we still take over 1,000 fans, and they get behind the players and they make some noise, and have all the guys who went on Saturday and went through all those conditions like yourself. I think that was a pleasing performance.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this weekend, Jacob, Swansea just got the one game this week, no midweek game. But for many, it's what? Sorry,
just not 6-0.
6-0. Don't go there, mate. Don't go there. But for many reasons, it's a game you can't underestimate how big a game it is this Saturday at home. There's so many reasons we want to get a win on Saturday, don't we?
Yeah. Well, as I mentioned earlier, like for me, I already see the makings of a good team. So I'm looking forward to Saturday. I'm not going with an expectation that it needs to be anything. I just want to see that strategy repeated. Because at the end of the day, if we can repeat it, it means we can be consistent, which means results are going to come. So if we can get that going and have a good performance, that's about as far as I am right now. If Sol Bamba messes it up at the back and it ends up 1-0 at the end of the game, but we've put a great performance in, I'm not going to cry. We're not going to get relegated. It ain't going to happen. So I'm not going to either way. Although I do think, looking at Swansea, in comparison to Middlesbrough, based on the last couple of performances, as a betting man, I fancy Borough. I fancy Borough against Swansea.
Yeah. And Dave, I was just going to say, I mean, Russell Martin's side, they play out from the back. They do try and play possession football and try and dominate the possession. But that also gives you opportunities as well, doesn't it?
It does when you've got likes of Watmore and Sparrow who have got legs on them and will press high. And I think that's under Hutchy. You're not going to get that here because of his legs. But with those two up front, they like to play out the back, and Sparrow and Watmore won't give them the chance to play out the back. And if you get Crooks and Tavernier as high up as possible as well from midfield, that's where they let themselves down. What we don't want is them getting control of the game and just keep passing it around. Because I think that's when we'll come unstuck, because they are a good football inside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Jacob, I mean, I think they're a point ahead of us in the table, Swansea, 3 places though above us. From their point of view, do you see them repeating what they did last season? They got to the playoffs last year. Do you see Swansea making the top 6, or do you again think they're just one of a number of teams, a bit like the Borough, that have a chance to get there, and it's just all in the lap of the gods?
It's it's the only thing that's consistent is that we're all inconsistent, so you just don't know. I mean, look at Jamie Patterson scored 8 goals.
Yeah. Oh yeah, what's going on there?
He scored 8 goals and got 6 assists. Like, why did we let him go? I don't know, man, but and then you've got the centre forwards banged 11 in, but yet they're losing games. They're not doing that. They're not that good. So
I took them to get relegated.
What Swansea?
Yeah, well, they let Ayew go. Then Conor Roberts went. Hurahan went. They had a massive sale, and then they went
for the manager.
Inexperienced manager. I thought, it's a recipe in disaster. That.
Yeah. I mean, hypothetical question here for you, Jacob, but you mentioned there about Patterson. If Chris Wilder had been in charge in the summer, do you think he would have taken on Jamie Patterson?
I think that Jamie Patterson would be another Marcus Tavernier in a central position.
Right.
So whether he would have done it if he had the option with Tav there as well, and he's thinking he'd have probably weighed him up against each other. But honestly, I don't know. When he did come on for Middlesbrough, he wouldn't. I know he only had 20 minutes and then a 45 minutes.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone's seen anything that was like, oh, he's great. But clearly he's got something about him because he's knocked 8 goals in already. Where's he? Is he playing as a second striker for them? Or
number 10, isn't he?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know. You'd have to ask Chris that one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I'll put this one to both of you boys. Coming to you first, David. Do you think Chris Wilder will make any changes to the starting lineup on Saturday? We know we've spoken in dribs and drabs earlier on in the show, but do you actually think he'll go with an unchanged lineup on Saturday against Swansea, or do you think he'll make some changes? And then same question to you, Jacob.
Well, I think he only changed it on this Saturday's performance because of Peltier's injury, because the other games he hasn't changed it. So I'd like to think he'd stay with it. I'm a big believer if you never ever change a winning side, no matter who out. We all know that 5 we would have over Bamba. Piero we would like to see in the team. Once you've come off the back of a 2-1 away win, I think you've got to keep the same team. So I don't expect to see many changes. Okay. Or at least I hope not.
Right. Jacob?
Yeah, I think I echo that. Although I wouldn't be totally bewildered if I saw Fry's name on the team sheet.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't. He should be.
Whilst I would say, would you after all that time out, really match sharpness, etc. But at the end of the day, he's seen him in training. He knows what he's about, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him in. It wouldn't even surprise me that much to see him in, and maybe even Jick Steele out. Something like that. It depends on how Wilder views him. I think on the right-hand side, for me, Fry is the central position like Bamba plays. But I don't know, maybe you see something a little bit different in training. So I wouldn't be too surprised to see him back in the team. But I would say that he's probably, in my opinion, he'll probably start on the bench with Piero. But then you look at the bench, and the bench excites you. and then you put a firework up the arse of Tav because you're like, you're going to have to start playing better now, and that delivery is going to be better because you've got C. Signor on the bench. Like, come on.
Jacob, I just thought the 3 games in 1 week, you would see more changes than he has, because I thought he'd want to assess the whole squad, and because he hasn't, I don't know if that tells us a lot of who's going to be getting shipped out.
Yeah, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've got 3 games in a week, that's very tiring, especially under a new manager bringing new ideas, and he hasn't made no changes apart from injuries.
Yeah, Saliki hasn't even had a sniff. He hasn't had 5 minutes, has he?
No.
And you could understand it, David, if you'd won those 2 games. And I'm not saying the performances were poor because they weren't, but in those 2 games you took 1 point, and he's only made 1 change. So yeah, it hardly points to there being many changes on Saturday after you've just won an away game. Although, like you lad said, I think if there is going to be a change, it's more likely to be in the back 3 rather than in the middle 3, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, would you make a change?
I think if there was to be a change, it'd be probably Fry for Bamba, I think. Just because of the sheer number of games that Bamba's played. And as Jacob said, I think you've both mentioned in the show, he has dropped 1 or 2 little clangers recently. And it's, I mean, he's already delivered far more than I think any of us would have expected when he signed in the summer. So you can't knock Sol in any shape or form for what he's done. But I think now might be a time to give him a little bit of a break and a bit of a breather.
Yeah, again, I think we're a little bit reliant on Bowler's fitness as well, which worries me. I know we've got Taylor there as a backup now, which we didn't, but Taylor hasn't played anything apart from the 60-minute reserve team. Isn't it funny how he struggled to manage injuries, a new manager comes in, he's played 3 90-minute games.
Michael Pellin thinks that Fry may start at the weekend, so yeah, we will see. It'll all come out next Saturday, 2:00 before an hour before the game when the teams are revealed. But come to predictions time, boys, and it's at the end of the show. But Jacob, are you still going with your old 6-0, or have you
No, I'm not.
had reason to revise your choice of score?
Do you know what? I reckon. What do I think here? They let goals in. They're not great at the back. I reckon 2-1 Middlesbrough.
2-1 Borough. David, over to you, pal.
I echo that, what Jacob said, James. I think there's going to be there's going to be goals in it, and I can see them conceding. So 2-1.
There's loads of confidence here. Steve Gorby's gone 3-1. David Olsen 2-1. Jacob Ross 4-2 to the Borough. Steve 2-0. I mean, Borough fans predict we're going to win after we've gone like 5 games on the row losing. So we're all going to go for a home win this weekend, aren't we? Of course. I mean, James Kendall's 7-3 to the Borough. I mean, hey, that would be some game if that happened.
He's drinking what I'm drinking him.
Maybe double.
It's what go on there, David.
Drinking double what Jacob is.
But no, I mean, 4 points from the first 3 games that Duncan Watmore, Chris Wilder's been in charge for. I mean, it's a reasonable start, but I mean, if you get another 3 points on Saturday, Jacob, that's 7 from 12. And again, it just keeps you in the top half of the table. It keeps you on the coattails of the top 6. Keeps everybody buzzing as we come up with a busy Christmas period as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. Again, no, I'm like I said before. It's for me. It's the trusting in the process and seeing the strategy work on the pitch, even if there's blips in it that cause a goal the opposite direction. But look, at the end of the day, we all want points. Even he said, I'm a short-term manager whilst I'm a long-term manager. But I just think we do need to have that bigger perspective. But then again, looking at the performances, I can see us getting 3 points. And yeah, if we did get 3 points, that would be a tasty return, really, for a new manager who is bringing about a complete different way of playing. And I think what we'll all agree with, all we need to do is look at a goal kick. It's a complete different way of playing than Wilder did. The whole midfield is so much more expansive and fluid, and everything's different. So, you know, these things take time, and yeah.
We will see. Well, Lee Fisher, thanks for your honesty, mate. He said, Art says 2-1, but something tells me it'll be 2-2. I think it's probably safe to say I don't think it's going to be a goalless draw on Saturday, but that's famous last words, and we might be talking next Monday on the show, lads, about a goalless draw. You never know, but I very much doubt it. But everyone, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for on this week's show, I'm afraid. My thanks go to David and Jacob for joining me. Many thanks, lads.
Pleasure.
Mate, thank you.
And thank you to everybody out there for watching and contributing to tonight's show. If you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe to Borough Fan TV. As I say, that's a lot for this week. On next Monday's show, we're going to be talking about the Swansea game. We'll have the FA Cup draws on the Monday night as well, so we might be a little bit earlier next week because we'll get the show out before the Cup draws made. But as I say, that's all from us three here tonight on Borough Fan TV. Have a good week, everybody. Take care and up the Borough.
Good Borough.
Up the Borough.
Cheers.